Yeah, there was a time when Miami was probably the second most important market for disco music behind New York. We had a very active club scene. We had clubs, and we had radio that was breaking records down here from play in the clubs. So it was a really active scene. We had as many as 150 DJs in the pool at one point, and so the record companies were always looking to us to do things for them. So eventually I morphed out of DJing at night and just running the record pool, and then got into record promotion, which was the precursor to my record label. I did record promotion for about between 10 and 12 years, and it was really another great business, and I had a lot of fun, and I was the urban promotion guy for the Southeast for most record companies. I never really worked for a record company specifically, like on salary. I was an independent guy, and I had accounts, and record companies would count on me to get the records played not only in the clubs but also on the radio at the urban stations, WEDR, A&M in Tallahassee, TMP in Tampa, the list goes on. And I did that frankly successfully for a better part of a decade. And then I decided that I thought that I had the crazy idea that I could start a record label of my own because of all my connections at radio and in the clubs, that I could just make records myself and they'd be huge hits. So for about three years or so, I put out a succession of real turkeys. I mean, they were, bombs, one right after the other. And I sunk a lot of money into some.
Can you name those?
Yeah, I mean, what happened was the time frame that I started the label was probably in the very early 80s, when disco and the record business itself was beginning to fade. It was about 81, 82, and that's when I decided I'm going to start a disco record label. So I put out a record called I'll Bake Me a Man. It was a remake of a Barbara Acklin record, and we did a disco version of it. And the producers, my co-producers, were Joe Galdo and Eric Schilling and Larry Dermer, who went on to do all my early Miami Sound Machine stuff. And it was a great record, sounded great. I don't think we sold 6 copies. Then we did a cover version of And I'm Telling You I'm Not Going, the first disco version of And I'm Telling You I'm Not Going from Dreamgirls. And Warren Schatz produced that. Warren Schatz was the producer of Vicky Sue Robinson Turn the Beat Around. And he's still a friend of mine to this day. And we promoted the hell out of it. And we sold maybe 7 copies of that. Mm-hmm. Things just weren't going well. And so there were some other things that we put out. And then one day, when I really had given myself kind of a time limit, I said, if this doesn't work out in another 6 months or so, I got to stop doing this record label stuff, because it's just not working. I'm losing money. Here I had the pool. The pool was great. I had my independent record promotion thing. That was going great. But the record label just wasn't doing good. So one day, a guy came to see me named James McCauley. And I don't know how he got my name or how we got together, but James brought me a record called Return to Planet Detroit. And I listened to it. It was quite different from anything else I put out, quite different from most things I'd heard up until that point. So we decided to put it out. And that sold a few copies. But then we put out an album called The Bass That Ate Miami, which had the single The Bass That Ate Miami on it and a few other things that we put out. And we had that crazy artwork on the cover with the bass speaker looking like it was Godzilla or something destroying Miami.
WEDR.
And it had the WEDR tower there, and it was really kind of like a spoof or whatever. Well, we put that out, and remember, this is 1982, so I think we only put out the vinyl to begin with. We hadn't even put out a cassette yet. And normally when I would put out a record, I put out the record and it would kind of lay there at the distributors or whatever, and then in about 90 to 120 days, I get a call from our distributor saying, hey, we'd like to send the record back. It's not selling. Well, after about a month, after a month after the Based at Miami album shipped, I get a phone call from one of my distributors, and instead of wanting to send the record back, they wanted to order more. Well, this was a revelation. So we had some in stock, we sent them more. Then I get another call. Instead of ordering 100 or more or 150, they wanted 1,000 or 1,200. All of a sudden, I realized I had something. And it was because of this new music, or its style, called bass, that was emanating from the streets and the clubs of Miami. And it was really different from the disco music, or different from traditional R&B. It was more from the streets. And it really, my release of the Bass at Miami kind of paralleled the release when Luke put out Throw the D, and he was just getting, so we were both getting started pretty much at the same time in the label business. I don't know the exact dates, but that's really how it started for me with that particular record.
What was the label called at the time when you...
I'd had a label called Red Rooster Records, and I put out a few early bombs, turkeys, and then I found out that Red Rooster was also a label that was owned by a rock band called NRBQ, and they had out the label before me, so I scrapped that label and I put together a label called Pandisc, and that's what we've put, all the hits out on since then.
Any affiliation with the Jam Packed label?
Well, my affiliation with Jam Packed was in the late '80s. I made a deal with Tony Butler to re-release much of the Jam Packed and Music Specialist catalog. Mm-hmm. In fact, I bought the most of the catalog, not all of them, most of it, and we reissued those records on the Pandisc label, and also signed Trinier and later on Debbie Deb, and put out new material on both of them, who had originally started on Music Specialist and Jam Packed.